Hello there. I recently had a quite stupid idea. A friend of mine approached me and asked me if I could downsize his current gaming PC when looking for a more compact case. He was at the time using a Fractal Define R5, and I found this one. This in Germany is sold as the Intertech IM01. I will quickly put up the regional names of this case on the screen. The most common other name is probably the Sama IM01. That's the US name. It's a pretty compact case, and it uses is compatible with somewhat standard components. So it does fit ITX and M-ATX motherboards, and it also just works with regular ATX power supplies. So I was inspired to do something like this by Sense. I'm just going to put it out there. I was watching a lot of his old school PC builds, his old Skunkworks videos, and his more recent video where he rebuilt Phil's personal computer in a case in a similar size of like this one. As I said, I already built one computer in this case, and one of the easiest case to build in. I think it's a great platform to work off, and it's also quite cheap. So in Germany this case is like 63 euros or something. Quite cheap. It's a basic case. It doesn't come with any fans, but to me it has everything you would need. And as I said, it supports standard ATX power supplies and M-ATX motherboards, so I'm not forced to use an ITX board. I've already taken off the side panels and put some components in, because this will be a tight fit. In the background you can... turn it off. Perfect. In the background you can see my 3D printer working, and I can assure you that this build will contain some 3D printed parts, because my current system under the desk is housed in a Fractal Define S. This case supports two 120mm fans on the bottom, two 120mm fans on the top. For that you already have to modify the bracket that holds the power supply. Did that for my friend's computer, so I could fit two 120mm fans up top. Since I have a Fractal, all my fans are 140mm, and I have a 280mm AIO. Right off the bat, nothing is compatible basically with this case. These components are not made to fit in this, but I will make them fit one way or another. My GPU luckily is just a GTX 1060, small little GPU, nothing huge. So even if I modify the power supply bracket and the power supply sits a little bit lower, and I don't have a modular or semi-modular power supply, it's just a regular ATX power supply, I will still have plenty of room up front here for the cables, for the general setup. My current PC has a Ryzen 7 5800X, a X470 ATX motherboard, so I will probably have to get a smaller M-ATX motherboard, looking for the ASRock B550 Pro 4, I think it's called. Already mentioned the GTX 1060, small GPU with the Radeon Tech Morpheus 2 cooler. The cooler is absolutely overkill for that card, but it's an OEM MSI card that came with a blower fan, and blowers suck, obviously. Yeah, and for the storage it's just gonna be a M.2 SSD, second small 2.5-inch SSD for video cache, basically. One single 3.5-inch hard drive. So this is gonna be basically the planning stage. I've put in some basic components. I mean, the ATX power supply, the form factor will always be the same, so just a very cheap OEM power supply and a dead motherboard, just to have something in there to see how everything will fit. As I said, the case does not support 140mm fans out of the box. So I've played around with a 140mm fan already, and while the brackets, everything's held with these little knobs here. In my case, they didn't break off right away, so that's nice. When I did the build for my friend, I basically killed 4 of these little plastic clipped receivers right away. Anyway, so to mount the fans, this case comes with these little brackets. One is on the top, one is on the bottom. Haven't removed the one on the bottom. So they sit in the top here. Just slotting it like that. But as I said, these brackets are not made for 140mm fans, so they have these ridges which are already too small for the 140s, and there's no mounting holes, so I basically have to ditch them right away. There is no way that these could help me mount the fans, really. Now, the case does feature 2 positions where you can mount 140mm fans, and that's on this side piece that just hooks in like this. But then again, with the regular power supply, ATEX power supply, I don't have any room, so at max I could fit one 140 fan, and as I said, I need to fit a 280mm AIO in this, so that's not gonna work. For the AIO, I already came to the conclusion that I will probably have to mount it either on the top outside of the case or on the bottom, while I'm not really sure how much room I will have at the bottom. While I do have a 1060 with the Ragentech cooler, it's pretty much like at least a 2.5 slot GPU. Now this is not an ITX case, so I do have 4 slots of space down here, but with the fans on the bottom, it's gonna be a pretty tight squeeze. Plus mounting the radiator on the bottom and the pump above that. With the AIO I have, it's the Alpha Cool Ice Bear 280. With that AIO, I should be fine, because the pump reservoir combo actually has some has a bit of extra fluid in it. It is a little reservoir, so the air has a place to collect that is not right in the pump. So in that case, it should be fine to mount the pump above the radiator, but obviously not recommended for most other AIOs. I might just rip out some of the components of my main computer now and start playing around with this. I'll be back in a second. So let's start with the GPU. This is the aforementioned MSI OEM GT1060 with the Ragentech aftermarket cooler, and I botched on a Twin Frozr cooler. I will try to put this in to see how much space I still have underneath the GPU when I put that in there. If nothing works out, I still have the blower style cooler of this card, but there's a reason why I switched to an aftermarket cooler. So let's see. Now the fans were put on with hot glue, very professional, I know. And while taking out the GPU, I accidentally ripped that one off. But should not make a difference for this little test. That will. Or does it? So that's in. Let's see how this works out. So, oh, should clean that at some point again. Now here we have the second bracket. Let's see if I can fit a standard 25mm thick fan in there. Okay, it's gonna be tight squeeze. There are like these tiny ridges on here, like little tabs or something. I don't really know what they're for, because nothing really hooks into them. It might be for cable organization, attaching cable ties. They're just annoying me, because I can't really put the fans on flush. So I'm gonna clip them off. And also, this case, out of the box, doesn't come with any side, doesn't come with a side window, but a window is actually available. And as I said, the case itself was like 60 euros, and the side panel is another 8 or 9 euros, so really cheap for an upgrade like that, in my opinion. Let's see. Also, I do not recommend metalwork on a case while there are components in there that you actually care about. As always, do as I say, not as I do. So, I will probably clean them up afterwards, but as of now, I'm just gonna keep them in there, keep them like they are. This is actually, should be a perfect fit. I'm not sure I can get the fan in there with the GPU right now. Turns out recording 4K 60 FPS is actually does consume quite a bit of memory. Didn't expect my SD card to go full that fast, but hey, first time really recording anything like this. So, as I said, a fan should just about fit underneath this cooler, which is really awesome. So I don't really need any brackets to hold the fan in place. I will probably just print some on my 3D printer, so I can use the existing mounting holes to still keep them in place. But in terms of thickness, the fans will be just the right height to support the cooler on the GPU, which is really nice, since this aftermarket cooler really only mounts to the 4 main mounting points around the GPU core and nothing else. So my GPU was really sagging quite a lot, which will be solved with this. And if I ever want to upgrade that GPU, that time will come, I might just buy another blower card and try to put on this cooler, if it's just the right thickness to, well, use the case fans to both push air into the case and also cool the GPU. So let's get that GPU out again. Down there you can really see how much the GPU sags, because the cooler itself is not attached to, doesn't have a shroud or anything, and the bracket on the rear is just mounted on the GPU itself, on the PCB, and not attached to the cooler. So it always has been hanging like that. So the GPU seems to be a tiny bit too high to properly slot in. I do have another half-broken GPU. This is my old SFF HD7870 XT. Was really cool, first proper GPU. Overclocking was super easy. The power consumption was absolutely ridiculous, but well, the VRM didn't explode on me, so was a fun card. Okay. As I said, the motherboard is broken. This GPU is pretty much broken. That's not how I would build with my proper working components, just to put that out there. Seems like these little tabs have to be, well, a bit convinced to go into this case, really. To slot into the respective part back there. So not sure how well you can see that, but the PCI slot is just quite a bit too low, and loosening of the motherboard mounting screws did not fix that, so nothing I will do about that, really. But now let's just see. So the fan is already as low as it is. There's nothing after clipping off these little thingies. They are flush. So let me zoom in on the next issue. So we have these little indents right here. That's where these fan brackets attached. Jesus Christ. So they slot in and drop in so that you have a flush surface for the panel to attach to. Since I'm not using these brackets, because they're only made for 120mm fans and hard drives, mounting that hard drive will be a different story. I'm not sure where I will even put that, but that's an issue for later. So I should probably snip these things out, although I don't really need to completely remove them, because for the fans to fit, let me focus in on that. So the fans really only need like 1 or 2 millimeters of space right on this edge, so I don't really need to remove all of that. I just have to take off 1 or 2 millimeters, and that should make the fans fit just fine. Yeah, the power supply will be a whole different story. The mounting bracket for the power supply right here is secured by 4 screws, 2 down here and 2 up there, and I can just use longer screws and a few nuts to drop down the power supply so it sits quite a bit lower. I still have enough space down here for the cables. As I said, I don't have a modular or semi-modular power supply, but I don't see any issue with that. Still plenty of space down there. I do have enough space to either mount the radiator or the fans on top, but as always there isn't a huge amount of space, or as in with most cases there isn't a huge amount of space above the motherboard and between the motherboard and the top of the case, so that will be my limiting factor. Just grab the top piece. There's quite a bit of ventilation, although since it's made for 120mm fans, you can see the hole diameter does get smaller, where a 120mm fan would basically end. But if I just overlay this with the fan, it's not too bad. Not too bad, really. And if I do have to mount the radiator up top, I might as well just cut it out and just leave it open, since why have another layer that obstructs airflow when it will be covered up by the radiator anyways. I should really check how thick the radiator is. Let me do that real quick. Okay, so it's a 30mm radiator. Just gonna grab my calipers. Don't really need any special equipment. I'm just gonna see if the fan fits up there. since it is compatible with 120mm fans, the fans should fit up there just fine. But yeah, I don't have another 5mm up there, so that's not gonna be possible. I will take out my GPU again, and will modify the case that I was talking about up here to be able to fit the fans in. And I might as well, I will see if I have some of those longer screws that I used for the other power supply to make room for the second fan up here, because again, fitting a fan up back here is no problem, but with the power supply you can't, with an ATX power supply you don't have room unless you drop the power supply down. Saying that, on my friend's build I used 120mm fans, so let's see if there is even enough space for two 140s before I hit the power supply, and obviously there is not. So no need to lower the power supply, because I will never, maybe, no, it should fit actually. Might have to turn around the power supply so the fan faces into the case. Well, not really a big issue, because as it is, there's really not much like separation right here, so the power supply will draw quite a lot of case air anyway. So I might do that. Yeah, I'll take out the GPU and cut the case up some more. So, cutting is finished. I can now mount the fans wherever I want to. That should work just fine. And I forgot something. So these side panels do have these little ridges which hold the filters in place, and they're gonna obstruct my fan. That's not good. That's not good. So the fan's gonna ride on that. I don't want that. That's gonna be quite a pain to remove, I think. Don't really see any other way than to use a Dremel for that. Let's see, on the bottom I'm definitely keeping this as is. Oh, and I should check out another thing. Because MATX motherboards do have more than one PCI Express slot, I'm not sure the GPU will be in the same position as it is with this motherboard, but it's even better. So the GPU will be one slot higher than with this motherboard, so I will definitely have enough room for the fans. So that's good. And that also means I do have enough room to just keep those little ridges in place. The fans could suck in a bit of case air, so I might just put in some foam to close those gaps. That means I can focus on the top side. And I think I'm gonna put in this GPU so I have some reference. And I forgot to mention, this case actually has an option for a vertical GPU mount, but, well, not really my style. Not gonna use that. What's next? Let's start with the bottom. Now the bottom panel comes with just some really basic feet. I might 3D print some spaces for them, just to give the fans a bit more breathing room, because they are quite small. So I think I'm gonna focus on the mounting part of the fans now. So in terms of mounting, these holes will be used by the power supply. I forgot to remove these. No, I decided to keep them in place because the power supply will be right there. So the fan's not gonna go that far forward. Let's just put in some fans and see where this is gonna bring us. Okay, so I still need to remove the mounting up there, right there. Otherwise I can't fit two. Putting only one fan on a 280mm radiator is pretty stupid, so not much I can do about that. I really do need the fan right there. To get a bit more space, there's also something I'm sure I've seen in some of recent Jason Sense videos. I will build a little ring for this power cord extension here to extend that a bit more outward. And that should get me all the space that I need right here. Let's just see how that looks with the top panel in place. Yeah, there's still plenty of ventilation. I'm not too concerned about that. But that leaves another problem. If I'm putting the radiator on the outside, that forces me to put the tubes either on this side, which would be the logical place to put them, or on that side where I would again need to cut away a bit from the case, I think. When I was playing around with the power supply bracket a bit more, I noticed, Jesus Christ, I noticed that these standoffs, these spaces are almost enough to fit the fan underneath these, and they're also wide enough to accommodate a 140mm fan. So no real need to have a go at this. Not really sure I want to run a water loop right above a power supply with a grill facing the tubes. That just doesn't sound very smart. Okay, what I will do is I will drill out the holes on this thing, attach the power supply again, a bit lower this time, so I can see where I can put the fans in. For the mounting of the top fans, I don't really need to worry about anything because those, let's see, I can mount the fans to the radiator. Yeah, I can reach the screws, so I can put the panel on, put the radiator on this side and screw them in on that side, but then I can't reach the power supply screws. This is getting a bit complicated. Yeah, the radiator screws have to go in from the inside. And I can't reach them, at least at the front here. Oh well. Should hold with 6 screws just fine, I think. No real worries there. Okay. Drilling time. So what did I do last time? This is the bracket again. So it's held in place by small just metal screws. I'll drill those holes out to... Right. So a fan would almost fit under this bracket. So basically putting another centimeter of space with a long screw, and I still managed to bend one of the legs pretty badly. Just gonna grab my leather man to bend that back. As good as new. So, power supply bracket is back in, drilled out the holes, put in the screws, but I will need to get to the hardware store to buy some regular nuts because I only have those nylon locking nuts and they are a bit thicker. Can't get them in there, so power supply is not mounted correctly at the moment. So you now have those black screws coming up there, fixed in place with a nut, and I will probably put another nut on the bottom, put the screw through, and then another nut on the top, and for the top one I need a regular one, because I can't fit the locking nut in there. That's it for the moment. And I've just noticed how unprepared I am to handle proper 4K 60 FPS footage, because it takes longer to get that off of the SD card than I, well, create new footage. So even with a few minutes of pause in between, my little NAS is not keeping up with the storage, with the transfer of the files. So I'm gonna get off to the hardware store to buy those nuts so we can keep going. One more thing I wanted to add for the water cooler, for the radiator. The nice thing about this Alpha Cool radiator is that it uses regular fittings and regular flex tubing, so I could actually drain the loop, add in some angles if I need to, some 90 degrees, and put it back together and refill it. That's not an issue with this loop, with this AIO. But now that I have a rough idea of how I want to mount it and where I want to mount it, I don't really think that's gonna be necessary to redo the loop, so to say. It would be pretty nice to have the plumbing, to have the connections to the radiator right here, but as I said, I'm not gonna put radiator plumbing right above a power supply, where a single drop drops right into my power supply. Anyway, little break, see you later.